There are even many atheists and naturalists who think that we just can't say whether there is life after death. There's no evidence one way or the other. So I want to tell you that we can say that there is no life after death. Sorry. Why is that true? Well, there's an argument. The argument is basically the following. The mind is the brain. That's what the mind is. There's nothing else other than the brain that is going on. Thank you. Brain fans, I like that. The brain. The brain is made of atoms. Any atoms fans here? Atoms, yes? Woo. Good. All right, here's the controversial one. Even my friends get annoyed when I say this, but it's the truth, so I will lay it on you. We know how atoms work. They're not a mystery to us. And they work in such a way that when you die, there is no way for the information that was you to persist after death. There's no way for that stuff, that knowledge, that set of beliefs and feelings that made you you to leave your body, because it is stuck there with the atoms that is decaying in your tomb or being cremated or whatever your favorite way to be after death is. So I want to emphasize, I want to make a little bit of an argument, a very, very, very little bit of an argument for the statement made in red that we know how atoms work. The point is that the laws of physics, we don't know all the laws of physics by any stretch of the imagination, but those laws of physics that are relevant to the atoms in your body, we know all of the laws of physics that far. There's no room for new laws of physics that would affect how the atoms in your brain actually work. That's a very subtle statement. So I could, I think that Dan mentioned I had 3 hours to give this talk. So but I would get tired if that happened. So I would give you the whole explanation for the laws of physics, how they came to be, why we're confident. But instead, I will just intimidate you in submission by showing you an equation. So in this one equation are summarized all of the laws of physics necessary to understand the atoms in your brain at the energy, mass, and length scales relevant to your everyday lives. We have quantum mechanics, we have space-time, we have gravity, we have the other forces, electromagnetism and the nuclear forces, we have the matter, the electrons and the quarks of which you are made, and we have, of course, the Higgs boson we discovered. Higgs boson fans also 2 years ago. The point is, again, there's plenty of room in the laws of physics for other stuff. We don't know how black holes work. There's plenty of things we don't understand. I'm not saying that physics is done. I'm a physicist. I know it's not done. I'm not going to retire soon. But we know enough to say that if there are any other forces, particles, fields, phenomena, they can't affect the atoms in your brain, because either they're so weak that they would have no effect on what the atoms are doing, or we would have found them in experiments. Those are the only two options. So no one ever understands me when I say this, so I'm going to say the same thing over again. Here are the caveats to this statement. I'm not saying we understand all of physics. I'm not saying that there's room for no new discoveries in the non-everyday world. I'm not even saying we know how the fundamental laws come together to make complicated macroscopic things like frogs and ecosystems and spiral galaxies. There's enormous amounts of work to be done in understanding how science works. But we have an underlying framework, which we call quantum field theory, as Dan mentioned. And quantum field theory is either true or false. All the evidence says that it's true, and if it is true, then there is no room for new physics that can in any way affect what goes on in the atoms in your brain. We understand what they do. There is therefore no room for the information that is you to persist after you die. And yet, even Alexander, bow tie and all, sells a lot more books than I do. He's #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. There's a few books back there. We can change that tonight, folks. Don't you agree? Why is it? What are we to do with people who say that they have evidence that there is life after death? I like to put it in terms of two options, and either one you are allowed to choose, but you should know what options you're choosing. Option one is that some ill-defined metaphysical substance not subject to the known laws of physics interacts with the atoms of our brains in ways that have thus far eluded every controlled experiment ever performed in the history of science. Or People hallucinate when they're nearly dead.